Welcome to T2SReddit. If you enjoy the video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable post notifications for more daily content. Make sure to stick around till the end of the video, you don't want to miss some of these responses. He brought a gun into the base and shot his commander dead, then killed himself. r/AskReddit. Has anyone known a killer before they killed? What were they like? A few years ago I hired a father-son handyman team to help me get my house ready to put on the market. Among other things, my outside doorknobs were in bad shape, so they installed new ones. The dad seemed pretty nice, even did a little bit for free. On their third and last day at my house, he was pretty fired up about a big job they were starting the next day. 3 days later he killed his new clients because they were unhappy with his work. A neighbor saw what happened and ran into her house and hid. He kicked her door in and shot her too. I was terrified until he was caught. My little sister dated a guy when she was in high school who ended up murdering a couple he owed money to for heroin. This dude beat them with a fucking baseball bat and hammer. He almost got the death sentence, but ended up with life in prison with no possibility of parole. He was a seemingly nice, polite teenager. I used to drive him and my sister around for various dates and things. He was quiet, but not oddly so. He just seemed like a normal teenage boy. Edit. Sorry, I just got some clarification on some details. The murder weapons were actually a microphone stand and a hammer. He is eligible for parole after 51 years. This happened in 2015. I graduated high school with Dr. Death, Chris Dunch. He was an asshole. He was charming with teachers and people who could benefit him. He was awful to everybody else. I didn't see it, but one or more awkward and vulnerable classmates said he bullied him relentlessly, and I believe it. He was easily irritated, and if you got on his nerves he would really lose his cool. Remarkably mean. And people would just shrug their shoulders and say that's just how Chris is. One of my parents' friends used to come around all the time. He was probably only 21. Nicest guy ever. Type of guy who wouldn't hurt a fly. A couple of years later he moved, and we seen him on the news for murder. Turned out he got on the ice and his girlfriend convinced him to kill her ex with her. They then buried him in concrete. Only reason they got caught was because they wrote their fucking names in the concrete. Boy, a couple years my minor in high school, he was always the outcast in his classes. He dressed funny, talked funny, and said disturbing things that some recall as threats, mostly to the girls of the school. After graduation, he ended up butchering a homeless woman he was, I can't say living together, or in a relationship with. I'm not sure what their status was either way. Kitchen knife, drained her into the tub in court. He showed no remorse, and was proud to have finally ended someone's life. His father was my professor in university. He took it very hard. Yes. Was hired at the same time as him. Worked right next to him for several years. He was one of those stoner guys always bragging about the parties he went to. He was a little obnoxious in a bro sort of way, so I always skipped hanging out with him after work. After I left that job a little while later, he killed his ex-girlfriend while her 5-year-old was in the apartment watching TV. Took the kid on a road trip to Texas and smothered her on Christmas morning and left her in a suitcase on the side of the road. He was an asshole. I'm not surprised he killed somebody. He killed a 65-year-old man in a revenge/drive-by shooting. He shoot at the wrong house point. The guy he intended to kill didn't even live in that neighborhood. I spent 3 months on a study abroad with a special forces, ex-FBI, guy named Joe. We were a small group of mostly students, whereas Joe was older, and there as part of foreign immersion training for the military. He was a little odd/awkward at times, and didn't share too much about himself, which we mostly attributed to the age difference. I described Joe as very intense but kind-hearted. The military was very important to him, and he always seemed very focused on that. But occasionally he'd make a dry joke or let his guard down for a moment with the group. He was very into photography and shared lots of great photos from the trip. He was also somewhat the protector of the group, and we always felt completely safe with him. One story I'll share was when he was walking over a bridge and spied some guys in the trees waiting to jump down and rob him. He pulled out a large knife he carried on him and casually brandished it as he walked by. The guy smartly decided not to mess with Joe, but after he crossed he saw them sprint across the bridge and hide behind a building. 2 policemen showed up shortly after, and Joe showed them where the guys were hiding, so the police could arrest them. Anyways, a few years after we got back I heard the news that he had killed someone and took his own life. He had been training for a new position and his commander deemed that he wasn't physically fit enough for the job. The judgment effectively ended his career, and he felt he had been unfairly judged. He brought a gun into the base and shot his commander dead, then killed himself. I went to high school with a girl who poisoned her father. No one knew until she confessed a year later watching a Shakespeare play in college. She was a little weird in school, but I didn't think she was capable of that. Semester of college. I had a computer science professor I really loved. Near the end of the semester, he told us he may be taking time off and finding a replacement for the semester. His severely autistic son had died in a tragic pool accident. He noted that the media was trying to make him look bad. I created a GoFundMe for funeral expenses. He appreciated it and shared photos to use on the page. Fast forward half a year, I get calls from news reporters asking what my thoughts are. He had been arrested on suspected unintentional manslaughter. It turns out, he had left his son outside in the cold by the pool, unsupervised, when he left for work. His son was never supposed to be unattended. His son was outside for who knows how long before the professor's daughter found the boy face down in the pool. Further research into the case revealed the boy was living in an unfurnished basement, feces all over the walls, often left alone. The police were at the home frequently. CPS had made various safety requirements for them that they never followed. He's being charged with unintentional manslaughter and various forms of child abuse. Him and his wife are being charged for filling the boy's Ritalin prescription for many months after the death. I still believe it was intentional. Texts revealed the daughter discovered the boy when the professor texted her, asking her to check if Freak was okay. I worked with a guy that murdered his GF. He was a cool dude. I sat with him a lot on my lunch breaks. We talked about football, school, life, etc. Pretty normal stuff. Never would think he was a killer. He was not an aggressive person at all. I dated a guy who later stabbed his mother to death. He was psychotic and abusive, and I fled the state because I was afraid he was going to kill me. I found out years later that he murdered his mother just a few months after I left him. He's still in prison. It's been 20 years, and I still have nightmares about him, and I still feel a little sick talking about it. The younger brother of a girl I was friends with in middle school and high school. They had some struggles growing up, and I know their mother was an abusive relationship because we gave her some help getting away from her husband. We connected many years later and found out that the younger brother had murdered someone. Initially it sounded pretty gruesome, but when I actually read court reports I kind of felt bad for the kid. He had some mental illness issues, but as a teenager apparently he had been groomed by a much older man into a sexual relationship where the man provided money, shelter, and of course drugs. He was extremely controlling and abusive. Eventually the kid tried to get away and was trying to start a new life with a girl he met, but this guy tracked him down and blackmailed him. Eventually kid snapped and murdered him. I think I felt worse for the kid because a lot of people can't get away from their abusers. Edit. For those who asked, he was 16-year-old runaway with a history of drug problems when he started seeing the more than 20 years older guy who used to film him. He struggled with drugs, but was doing well, and he met with the man to tell him he loved someone else and he wasn't going to see him again. His story is that the guy attacked him saying he'd rather he died than break up. He had injuries consistent with fending off a knife attack and said he killed the man in self-defense. What probably really screwed him over is that he didn't call the cops, he hid the body instead. Despite all of the evidence pointing to him being preyed on, he got a sentence that is longer than the average human lifespan. He committed the crime in a place where being gay or bisexual isn't really acceptable. A lot of the stories in the news refer to him as a hustler and say that he killed one of his patrons. I knew this guy before, like literally the night before the crime. He was at my house talking about a new job he thought he'd gotten, how he was going to be able to take better care of his daughter, a new tattoo he was going to get, just random stuff. Some backstory. He had a brain tumor when he was I think 9 or 10. Not sure what kind or where, but he was a Make-A-Wish kid. I think he went to Disney or something, but they did manage to get it out with surgery. So he was a little, well, he wasn't stupid or disabled, but I'd say slow. Basically, he was a little shit through his teen years. Big pants, loud music, fast car, yo I'm gangsta, kind of thing. But when he met his girlfriend, and then, especially when his daughter was born, he seemed to change a lot for the better. He was the younger brother of a friend of mine. I went from you cannot bring Eddie to my house and I don't even want him to know where we live, to sure, Eddie and you can come for dinner. So yeah, lots of change. The night it happened we played D&D that evening, and he was as boringly normal as he ever was. Actually he'd never expressed any anger or anything toward the girlfriend's mother, at all. He'd said how happy he was, that she was letting them live there, and helping with the baby. After, we only saw him once more, in court, when he was sentenced. We went with his mom, who we knew, and at the end, he turned his face, and wouldn't even nod to us. I just don't get it. I don't think I ever will. Thanks for watching. Subscribe below for more daily content.